What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.
Hello, Avaya family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner Ike Allen and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of Avaya University. Avaya is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our fellow teacher, Mark Andreas, is with us today to talk about freedom that's indestructible, dissolving childhood trauma with core transformation. Mark lives in Boulder, Colorado, where he runs a private practice offering core transformation coaching to individuals around the world. He helps people resolve limitations and achieve life goals using core transformation, NLP, metaphors of movement, the wholeness work, and other methods of personal transformation and development. Mark also is an author and he trains NLP internationally. Welcome to Avaya, Mark.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Great to have you. So let's start off with what is core transformation for people who don't know?
Yeah, so core transformation is a gentle step-by-step process that was developed by Andreas. And this is a process that transforms feelings, behaviors, thought patterns that we want to transform. So it's a really great method for including all of the things that can be a result from childhood traumatic experiences, as well as many other things that people want to transform, even if they haven't experienced childhood trauma.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And do you have any examples of results that you personally have gotten with trauma through core transformation that you could share?
Yeah. So I have two examples I'd like to share. So one is a man that I worked with who, as a kid, he had been sexually abused by a teacher. And later in life, as an adult, one of the main symptoms he was experiencing as a result of this was these involuntary body jerks that would happen. There were various triggers for these. He said they happened as much as 300 times a day. So understandably, this was something that was really mentally, physically, and emotionally draining for him. And in our first session, we started with core transformation, and we worked with the involuntary jerking response specifically to loud noises that he was experiencing. And a week later, he reported back that the noise level that he was aware of had already reduced by 80%. And then a few sessions in, he told me a story. He said, Mark, the other day, at the end of my workday, I turned around and I realized that the doors behind me were open. And across the room, there's another set of doors. Those were also open. And in the past, I would have had to have both of those doors shut and still would be bothered by all the noise coming in through the street. And here he had done an entire workday with both sets of doors open and didn't even realize it until the end. And he turned around and saw that they were both open. So I just love examples like that. And also a few sessions in, he said that the body jerks had by that point reduced to about 90 to 94%. So only about 10 to 6% remaining. And a year and a half after we worked, he said, now there's very, very little jerking response. Occasionally it comes up. And when it does, he tends to have some awareness of why it's coming up. And he can even have with that awareness, some ability to reduce it himself. And then, of course, he also has the option of using core transformation with those occasional episodes, just a couple times here or there that it happens now.
And is it important, before we move on to your other example, is it important to know what events from childhood caused this reaction to
that's a great question.
Slamming door, or does it not matter if we don't remember?
Yeah, with core transformation, it doesn't matter if we don't remember. And he actually said that he hadn't remembered it for a period of time, which can be one effect of trauma, of course, is that we just really push something back to, out of our awareness. So with core transformation, we don't need to know where it started from. We just need to know the present experience that the person wants to transform.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. Great question. So the other story I want to share is somebody who had significant issues from both childhood trauma and also later trauma in later life. And she said she experienced significant problems for 30 to 40 years. So in her family growing up, she said she had long been the scapegoat of the family. She'd been a dumping ground for toxic emotions. She said that she experienced low self-esteem and inability to stand up for herself. And she struggled with guilt, with shame, not feeling acceptable. And taking on too much responsibility was one thing that she struggled with as well. And she also mentioned having an intense fear of the night and fear of the dark. So when her partner had to leave town for a work trip or something like that, she said she had to leave the lights on in the whole house, leave the lights on the whole night. And she found it really difficult to get any sort of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a lot of trauma in her past to account for this. So she had, there was an experience with a voyeur. She was stalked. She experienced harm from trusted figures of authority, multiple accidents. She even had some allergy reactions. And one time was even held at gunpoint while a friend was raped in front of her. So a lot of trauma, both from childhood and then also later. So I worked with her using just core transformation we did 4 marathon sessions. So I remember some of them were close to 4 hours long, which we divided up into two meeting times. But after those sessions, what she said was, she said, core transformation has changed my life. I'm amazed at the dramatic shift I've had, not only in the areas you and I worked on, but other areas of my life as well. I'm finding troubled relationships suddenly improving. It has been an empowering experience. So that's what she had to say after that.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing those examples. And so, okay, how does it all work? What are some of the key elements to core transformation?
Yeah, so core transformation really has 5 key elements. So the first is the unconscious mind, which is probably familiar to a lot of the viewers listening in. And so if a client comes to me and says, okay, I feel shame in X situation and I don't want to. So consciously they're aware of something they want to shift. And yet that conscious awareness hasn't been able to shift it, or they wouldn't be coming to me. They've probably tried a number of things already, because they know that it's causing issues. So we could say that this must be generated by some unconscious or automatic part of them. If it was a conscious thing, they could just consciously decide to stop it. So it's important to work with the unconscious. And it's also, we can talk about it as an unconscious part of us that's generating the negative emotional response or feeling or behavior, such as shame, because consciously I want it to change. So there's a part of me that very much wants this to change. And yet there's another part of me, an unconscious part of me, generating this experience. So with core transformation, we're able to locate and tune in to and communicate with the unconscious part of us that's generating the response. And the third element is that we assume, and we actually just find this to be true, that every behavior we have, every emotional response, every thought pattern has some positive purpose, is trying to get something positive, whether or not we consciously are aware of what that may be. So, for example, maybe a part that feels shame is wanting me to be a good person, or maybe it's wanting to please other people so that I can just be safe or survive a situation. That there's some positive purpose that all of these parts want, and that then we can also discover these deeper purposes. So this is the fourth element in core transformation. We can go deeper than the initial positive purpose. And so I'd like to take a moment just to do like a really brief kind of self-demo or role play, just to show what this might look, so people can get just a taste of the process. Of course, the process itself is much more in depth and very precise language to the whole process, the whole thing. Yeah. But basically, I can go, okay, so if I'm experiencing shame, and in this moment when I kind of step into this, it's like I experience it like from my chest, and it's like goes up, and there's sort of a flushing into my face. And so, okay, I really don't want to experience this response. It gets me in, it really limits me in a number of ways. So I'm going to tune into this part of me here in my chest rather than trying to mentally come up with a solution, ask this part, what do you want? And just notice what response comes back. It may be a feeling, it may be an image, it may come in words. And so what I notice right now when I ask this question, what do I want? What do you want? Excuse me, speaking to this part, it's like, oh, like there's just this sense of like wanting to be acceptable or be a good person. And so I'm going to thank this part for this response, invite it to step into what it's like to be acceptable, to be a good person the way it wants. And when it's experiencing what this is like, I just ask, what do you want through being acceptable and being a good person that's even deeper still? And I just notice what response, and the first thing I get is like, oh, well, so other people will like me. Okay, great. So I thank it for this response, invite it to step into what it's like to have other people like me, and ask, what do you want through this that's even deeper? Oh, well, then safety is what comes for me. It's like, finally I can be safe. So I thank the part for this, invite it to step into safety. And what do you want through this? Oh, finally I can relax and just be more open. And, we can continue going deeper and deeper. Maybe through that, it's a joy that's wanted. And eventually we'll get to what we call a core state of being, which is something like oneness or just okayness or wholeness or being, it's something at a beingness level, a state of being. And the core state is so powerful because it's something that actually is independent of whatever else is happening. It's something that we can actually step into, this part of us can actually step into an experience regardless of what else may be happening or not happening. And so that brings us to the fifth element that's so transformational, is that we get to this core state of being, which can be experienced now before anything else happens. And so this is the freedom that's indestructible. It's beyond doing, beyond getting. It's just this sense of oneness or presence that is possible to experience regardless of what else is happening. And it's very transformational.
Thank you so much for going through those. And I think I missed one. What was the second one?
Yeah, so the second element was the parts. So
Okay.
the unconscious and then the unconscious part of us, so it's a parts model.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I thought that was it, but I just wanted to make sure. So we've got, right, the unconscious mind, the unconscious parts of ourselves, finding that positive purpose, a deeper purpose, and then the core state of being. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. So how does this, do people, when I see core state of being, of course, like as my own personal experience, I start to kind of tap into like my spiritual parts, I guess you would call them, or kind of a spiritual side of things. Is it a spiritual program? Is it not a spiritual program? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so it's not something, you don't have to have any spiritual beliefs to benefit from the process. So the process itself doesn't need you to subscribe to any particular belief system. However, a lot of people do experience it as a very spiritual process, and getting to these core states are, talk about it as like, wow, that was a spiritual experience. Or like, I remember one person who was, my mother, Connie Ray, she's the one who developed this work. She described working with this person when they got to the core state, she got kind of angry, and she's like, oh, that's unusual. That's not usually the response. And it was like, she said, well, I've been meditating for 10 years trying to get to the experience that you just guided me to in this first session. So a lot of people experience it as a very spiritual experience.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to. You might have other words for it or other ways of describing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. That's just what came to me. So I appreciate you making that distinction for people. And yes, everyone obviously have your own experience of whatever that is for you. So what would you say is unique about core transformation as a healing modality?
Yeah, so there's also 5 really keys to what makes it unique as well. So The first one is that this process, core transformation, it's very compassionate and kind. It's a very gentle process. And so it's just a really wonderful way to work for somebody who's had experience with childhood trauma, as well as, like, why wouldn't we want to have it be that way for all of us, no matter what we're working with? So it's deeply compassionate and kind. Also, it's when working with trauma, specifically in childhood trauma, we're likely to encounter objections to the work. And so this is often called resistance. With core transformation, we could say that actually there is no such thing as resistance. So it's a model where when something comes up that feels like, oh, it's resisting something, or, oh, I object to, or that doesn't feel safe, or, oh no, this is not okay, I can't do that, which came up a lot. That comes up almost guaranteed if you're working with childhood trauma, like lots of things like that. With core transformation, that's actually just another part that's making itself known that needs to be included in the process to get the full transformation. So we don't see that as resistance, but actually as exactly what's needed to happen. The system is showing us, hey, this also needs to be included. And there's a very easy way of including that with core transformation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then also core transformation gives us a way to integrate these parts. So a lot of parts work is helpful in getting better sort of negotiation, or, between our inner parts, or more inner harmony between parts, or helps, me as a person communicate better with my parts. With core transformation, we go a step further where we can actually integrate the part into the whole. So we're getting to more and more wholeness, because after all, we are whole human beings. And so that's really an important thing that sets core transformation apart from a lot of methods, that has an easy way to do that. Mm-hmm. And part of what makes it easy is the fourth element, which is the core state. So getting to this beingness level is what allows that integration to be easy and to be possible. So the core transformation has this unique ability to go, way beyond just emotional responses and coming up with kind of better emotional responses to really this transformational state of being that we can all access, no matter what kind of trauma or challenge we've been through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you for going through those different ways that it is unique. And the resistance one really spoke to me when you were talking about that, because definitely anyone watching who's dealt with childhood trauma probably has resistance to various things. One of the things that comes to mind is like lack of trusting others. If we had caregivers that we trusted and then didn't treat us well, or had any kind of abuse or something like that. Could you share a little bit more about how maybe that resistance to trusting this process would come up for someone, and how that could be incorporated in?
Yeah, totally. So, for example, the second story that I shared, safety came up a lot for her. And that's really common with something like childhood trauma or any kind of trauma. And so, we'd be going through the process as I kind of demonstrated, and we might get to some experience like, oh, now I can experience joy. And another part would pop up. She'd say, oh my gosh, I just suddenly got this like tension. And I can sense this. There's a part of me that's like, no, that's not safe. I can't experience joy, or I can't relax. I have to always be on guard, that type of a thing. And so that was partly why these were marathon sessions, is that there were many parts like that, not just one, but many that would arise at different times going, whoa, this is not safe. This is not safe. This is not safe. And so rather than trying to convince a part that it's safe, when that part's like, I'm not going to listen to you. It definitely wasn't safe when I was a kid. We can just honor that part, welcome it, and go through the process with that part. And it will also get to its own core state experience. So it's this, and this gets to the final element, which is that the problem itself, whatever the emotional response or behavior or thought pattern that we want to change, that problem itself actually holds within it the solution. So we don't need to come up with anything from the outside. And this is what makes it so easy, because the solution's already there. We just need to listen and welcome these parts, thank them for protecting us in the best way they knew how, and find out what they're really wanting at the deepest core levels, so that that can support them in doing it even more easily and effectively, doing their job that much more easily and effectively, really.
Yeah, beautiful. I appreciate you going through all of that and, giving people an idea of what it's like to go through the process and what things might come up for people and how you can work with that, because that's just another part. And yeah, I love the gentleness, loving, compassionate, modality that it is. And I know that there's some research on core transformation as well. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, happy to. There was a first study done, a randomized controlled trial, which is the gold standard in research to have a controlled study. This was published in a peer-reviewed journal in July 2019 the July 2019 issue of the Journal of Counseling and Development, authored by Dinesh Braganza and his team. And this study showed significant change both in symptom reduction, but also in increased well-being after a single session with a skilled guide. And so according to one of the research instruments they used, the GHQ questionnaire, 61% of those who could have had a clinical diagnosis before treatment no longer fell into that category 4 weeks after just a single core transformation session. So that was one part of the research that really stood out to us as like, wow, okay, like we have a lot of experience of this being an effective method, but that was impressive even to us.
Yeah.
And they also looked at some meta studies or studies of studies, this researcher, and he found that with core transformation, compared to these studies that he was able to find, got similar results after one session that these other studies or other methods had gotten after 13 to 23 sessions. And not only that, when we zeroed in recently, we thought, oh, wait, let's zero in on the subgroup with the most serious issues. When we did that, the one session of core transformation actually was equal to the very best results that were gotten from these other methods after 13 to 23 sessions. So we also have some other unpublished research. So we've been doing some research on Tamara, who's co-author of the book Core Transformation, and I teach the advanced core transformation and the core transformation coach certification training. So we've been doing research with our coaches in training, our core transformation coaches. And in the 2020 research, we had them guide community members through 2 sessions of core transformation. And after the 2 sessions, they worked with something that they considered mild to medium issue. We asked them to rate the significance of the change. And they, on a 0 to 10 scale, so 0 being no significance whatsoever, 10 being highly significant, slightly over 80% of the participants rated the significance of the change that they experienced between 6 to 10 on that 0 to 10 scale. So we're still working on writing up and crunching all the numbers and that sort of thing. But that was one result from that study. And we just concluded a randomized controlled trial with our coaches last year that also seems to have really similarly effective results similar to the other studies. So we're working on getting all these the numbers crunched and published, and yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. Always good to hear the research and what it's showing. And I love, obviously those results sound amazing, and I can see why it's working so well for people. So where does core transformation, would you say, fit into the whole journey of recovering from trauma?
Yeah, so we have kind of at Andreas NLP. For those of you who don't know what NLP is, don't worry about it. Core transformation is kind of an outgrowth from NLP, and it's also really its own method that stands alone and has its own presuppositions that are different from standard NLP training. But so we have our own model of transformation, stages of resolving trauma. And So 3 stages. The first stage is reaching a position of safety with respect to the traumatic event. So, when somebody's experienced a traumatic experience, they usually feel unsafe and probably were unsafe. And so a typical response is to try to get some distance, maybe completely obliterate, the memory. I don't want to even think about it kind of a response. That's really normal and natural. And so some of the problems with that is that often people can't really do it fully. And so they're vulnerable to triggers, flashbacks, things where they fall back into that negative experience and then feel totally overwhelmed by it again. And then the other problem that people often experience is that even when it works, it's at a cost. So by separating from that, I'm also separating from myself and from my experience and my intuition and my inner wisdom, which is really there to help keep me safe now and into the future. And so the first stage of working with trauma is to help somebody achieve this place of safety without having to have those negatives of disconnection from myself, and also the vulnerability of falling back into the traumatic experience. And so core transformation works really well for this stage 1, as well as some other methods that we teach in NLP, like the NLP phobia trauma process, or the NLP eye movement integration, which is kind of like EMDR, the NLP version of EMDR.
Mm-hmm. Got it.
So the first stage is, achieving a place of safety, and core transformation can work really well, as well as some of these other methods. Then the second stage is, okay, once I've actually achieved a position of safety and I'm able to think about that memory just like any other memory, it's a neutral memory. It doesn't intrude upon my experience. I don't get flashbacks and negative experiences when I think about it. Now, okay, what about all of the other responses? Often there are many other emotional responses, behaviors, thought patterns that are related to the traumatic event that are still really important for people to work with. So this is where core transformation really shines and can do a lot of wonderful transformation work, and where most people are going to be spending the most time is on this stage 2. So, I'd invite listeners to think about for yourself, even if you haven't gone through childhood trauma, we all have these sorts of things that we want to transform. And often for childhood trauma, it might be things like, you might think, do I have an experience of like shame or worthlessness as a result? Do I experience sadness or grief at having lost out on some kind of childhood experiences, or emptiness or abandonment, or maybe I'm angry at certain people and I have rage or resentment based on what happened, or hurt or betrayal. Often hopelessness or despair, like, is it even possible to have a normal life? I might experience judgment of myself or judgment of others, or maybe both. I might go mental, retreating from my body, as I was talking about, like more over analyzing and disconnected from my full experience. Inauthenticity of one version or another, maybe people pleasing, or addictive behaviors or other unhelpful habits. And, there's so much more as well. So you might just think, do I have some of these things going on? Or if you're working with clients, that's some areas to check. And core transformation does really well with all of those emotions, those habits or behaviors, those thought patterns, and transforming those. So that's stage 2. And that might take, that might be a series of months or years to there's kind of an endless possibility to work with these different things. And some people like to really stick with that and get a lot of transformation by just working with one thing after another and just getting more and more transformation. And so then finally, the third stage is that we have even deeper transformation that's possible. And through specifically the wholeness work, which is something else that we teach, also developed by Mark Andreas. And we don't have time to go into it today, but that's something where we can get even, like with core transformation, it's really excellent at integrating these parts to becoming a whole and a whole experience from this core state experience. Then with wholeness work, we can go to an even deeper experience of resolution that's hard to even describe. So like as one client of my colleague Tamara said, it's like, core transformation is really good at transforming the things that I can put my finger on, whereas wholeness work is really great at transforming the things that I can't put my finger on. So those are our 3 stages of working with childhood trauma and trauma in general.
Beautiful. I love your last phrase. That's a beautiful way of putting it. Well, thank you so much. You're a wealth of information and have done such a great job of explaining this and for people. So let's talk a little bit about how people can learn more about core transformation. I know you have a free PDF book on core transformation below, as well as a 40% off coupon for a video training that you do. And both of those buttons are below. Can you share about those?
Yeah, so the free gift that we have to offer is the PDF copy of the book, Core Transformation. So this will give you an in-depth experience of the full process, includes how to guide yourself. Now, if you're working with something as intense as childhood trauma often is, we recommend you're probably going to want a skilled guide to guide you through this to begin with. However, there are people who have experienced really significant benefits just from reading the book and guiding themselves through, maybe with mild or more medium issues, guiding themselves through based on the book. So that's the first thing. And then the special offer is 40% off coupon on the Core Transformation Foundation video training. So this is good for a limited time. So if you're interested, go ahead and do that, and then you'll have access to it for life. So normally that's $145. 40% off, I believe, is $87. And so attending the live training is $595, and it's all of the information that you get in the live training. So there's really a lot of value in this training. So I hope you take advantage of it. And also, it includes 2 other processes that I haven't even talked about today that are also really complementary with core transformation. One of them working specifically with relationships, aligning relationships, and the other with our sense of our lineage, which often is obviously a big part of childhood trauma and can be an important aspect of working with childhood trauma.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for offering all of that. Again, everyone, the free PDF copy is below. You just click on the link and go grab that, as well as the coupon for the foundation video training. Any last insight you want to leave people with, Mark, before we wrap up?
Yeah, so I'd like to just share a story, actually. And this is a true story from Thailand, where there was a Buddhist monastery that had this revered Buddha statue. It was like a 12-foot tall plaster Buddha statue. And the government said, hey, we're building a highway through here. You got to move the statue. So the monks in this monastery were obviously not exactly thrilled by this, but they didn't have any choice about it. So they're making the best of a challenging situation. And they get some cranes in there and hook it up, and they're trying to move it. And it turns out it's way heavier than they had calculated. And some cracks are starting to form, and they're going, oh no, so a storm was coming in, I think. And so they threw some tarps over it, and okay, we'll deal with this tomorrow. So in the middle of the night, one of the monks came out and lifted up the corner of the tarp and shone his lantern in, and something shined back out at him. So in the morning, they took off the tarps, and some more of the plaster had fallen away, and there was actually a 10-foot tall golden Buddha statue on the inside. So they started peeling away the plaster and the layers, and there before them was this golden Buddha that had actually been there all along. And they looked at the history of it, and many years, I think it was like centuries earlier, an invading army had come through. And so what the monks did to protect this revered statue was they plastered it over. And it worked in a sense, except that all the monks were killed when the army came through. And so the secret was lost. So for hundreds of years, all of these monks were worshiping this statue, the plaster, thinking that this was the real statue. thinking that this was it. And it was just in this moment of challenge and difficulty that these cracks were forming, and like things did not seem to be going well, that actually through those cracks, they were able to discover that inside had been this golden Buddha all along. And really, that's, I think, a wonderful metaphor for what core transformation is doing, is that, often we can be in an experience, and I think particularly with something like childhood trauma, where it's like, gosh, is this it? Is this the real me? This doesn't feel like what life should be. And with core transformation, it gives us a reliable way to access the core experience, that golden Buddha that actually is within all of us and is indestructible. So no matter what challenge we've been through, no matter how difficult life has been, we all have these core experiences that we can access through this process. And so, I think I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful metaphor. I love that so much. There's just so much in that. I so appreciate you sharing that to wrap things up. And thank you for doing this. It's been so nice to get to know you and hear about core transformation.
Well, thank you so much, and really great to get to know you as well, and just really appreciate all that you've done to create a platform for us and others to share this with as many people as we can. So.
Yeah, well, yes, absolutely. Our pleasure. And thank you so much for doing this, Mark. And thank you, Avaya students as well, who's listening or watching right now, for showing up for yourself today. It says so much about you that you're here and you're willing to take a look at all these great things and go on your own journey. So we will see you all again very soon. Take care. Hello, Avaya family. Thank you so much for joining us for this last class with Mark Andreas. He was with us today talking about freedom that's indestructible, dissolving childhood trauma with core transformation. I really enjoyed this conversation with Mark. I think he did such a beautiful job of articulating what core transformation is and going through the different elements of this, what kinds of benefits you might see if you decide to go and do core transformation, some of the stories of success and all of that. So a few of these core key elements that we talked about were getting in touch with that unconscious mind. And because so many of us have these unconscious parts of ourselves that obviously we are unconscious of, we don't even know about, that are really running our life in so many ways, and maybe not in the best ways, right? So it's getting in touch with that. And then of course, going deeper into that and getting in touch with those different parts and being compassionate and gentle and loving towards those parts, and working with those parts, and also looking at what are some of the positive purposes that come out of this? If a part was trying to protect you from something, then that's a positive. It served a purpose in the time that it needed you to keep you safe or what have you. So, right, looking at those positive purposes that those parts created in your life, and then looking for an even deeper purpose. So I kind of like envision kind of like a staircase going down in this process, and then getting down to this deep core state of being, which Mark described as this is that freedom that is indestructible. And I thought that was just a very beautiful way of describing it, and kind of explaining, how you go through these different elements into this core state of being. So I hope that you found this helpful, everyone. As always, it's great to have you here. And thank you so much for joining us. We will see you again soon. Take care.
Avaya has changed my life.
Avaya has made me the woman I am today.
Avaya is my home.
Avaya is personal freedom.
Avaya is the reason my life continuously improves.
Let everyone in your life know about Avaya.
Everyone needs to know about this amazing company.
Thank you, Avaya, for appearing in my inbox.
What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at Avaya is what the world needs.